All right, so episode number 2 of Gone Girls from Netflix, it changed my mind about everything. I am freaking blown away, and I cannot recommend enough this series. Now, I said last episode that a lot of times these documentaries are put out to be hit pieces right before a goes to trial, and being that this is close to when Rex Heuermann, I think is his name, is going to go to trial for the Gilgo4 murders, I thought to myself, this is exactly what this is going to be. But it's funny because if you go back and you watch episode 1's review, I tell you there what the difference is between a good documentary and a hit piece. A good documentary is one that leaves you thinking, oh shit, like I have no idea what to believe now, and I should pay more attention to this case. Episode number 2. Episode 1, by the way, was kind of boring, but you probably need it for background filler information, so make sure you watch that if you haven't. But oh my god, I can't recommend this. I haven't even finished the series. There's a part 3, but part 2 made the entire series, no matter what happens from here on out, completely worth it. Blew my mind. And I'm going to go on a rant. And so I apologize right now. I'm going to go on one of the biggest personal rants I have ever had, because this case is accentuating the primary focus of my life, if you will, of the Devil's Advocates channel, and why I rail against shit that people say to me on a regular basis. And I'm hard. Like I'm polite to people. I'm respectful. I don't hate people. So when I give you this passion, this impassionate speech where I'm going to be very angry and very passionate, it's not that I hate people. It's that I get frustrated at the stupidity and the locked-in arrogance and closed-mindedness of a lot of the public, especially when they come after me and they accuse me of being a crazy conspiracy theorist, while themselves are just being what I call an ostrich, right? I've heard other people mention this too, the head in the sand thing. I'm just going to wait until people tell me what to think, and then I'll think. I'm furious at these people. And again, it's not that I hate the people. I don't want any harm to come of people who think differently than me. That's not the point. But when they attack me and call me a crazy, unhinged conspiracy, those are words used against me just recently on my thing. You're unhinged. There's something wrong with you. Why do you take this so seriously? Something's off with you. You're a crazy nutbag, you know. And then this episode will explain exactly why those people get so under my skin and why I'm so passionate about this topic. So let's get started with this. Again, episode 2 changed everything. This series, regardless of what happens in episode 3, in my opinion, is a must watch now. A must watch. So in answer to, for example, why do you take things so seriously? Who cares? Well, why don't we just wait? This is the attitude. Why don't we just wait? You're too early, Mr. Advocate. You're too early on giving opinions about this case. Just wait until the case is over, and then you can comment on it. I don't know how else to say, screw people who have this attitude of let's just wait until law enforcement tells us what to think. Let's just wait until mainstream media tells us what to think. This is disgusting shit. And I want to point out to you, there's a reason why people like myself do what we do. We do what we do because too often people won't ask the difficult questions when you need to ask the questions. They wait until the official story has been put out, and that's the story for them. And they sleep great at night. And worse yet, you sleep great at night and you insult people like me and attack me for having something wrong with us because we're conspiracy theorists. Because you choose to believe the story that feels good at night, the one that they tell you to think, because you don't want to ask questions too early. Told you I was going to go on a rant. It's going to get worse. All right, so let me talk about this. There's an author and a journalist in this episode who's featured. He's featured so far in episode 1 and featured in episode 2. Very heavy. By the way, this guy's got a creepy smile, in my opinion. He's got this kind of creepy looking smile on his face the entire time. I think it's just the way he looks. I'm almost positive he doesn't actually smile all the time, but he has kind of this weird upturned thing, and I'm not trying to insult the man. What I'm saying is, for the first episode, I'm thinking, why does this guy think this is so funny? Why is he? And it's not. I don't think that's even what he thinks. I think he just has a face that constantly looks like he's slightly grinning all the time, and it comes off a little weird. That's just an FYI. But anyways, this particular reporter, and it's not important what his name is, he wrote a book on the Gilgo4 murders, and he's featured throughout the thing, and he always looks like he's got some kind of inside joke going on, because I think it's just the way he looks. Side rant. But the point being is that I want to accentuate one thing that he said that makes me go on an enormous rant. So he was talking about during his investigation into the Gilgo4 murders, people kept telling him all the time, police corruption, you need to look into police corruption. And he literally says, look, I told people, they kept trying to bring up police corruption, and I told people I am not interested in conspiracy theories. And so he just blew him off. He blew him off. He said, I'm not interested in conspiracy theories. Ugh! Once again, I'm so freaking angry at people who think that law enforcement always tells you the truth, and that if you question law enforcement, you're a crazy conspiracy theorist. And even this freaking reporter who's featured all through, and he changes his mind. Why does he change his mind? Because he finally gets persuaded by another journalist to look at, hey, there actually might be police corruption here. Fuck you. Of course there's police corruption. And again, let me get this straight. I love law enforcement. I'm not trying to say all police are corrupt. But what I'm saying is I personally really have a problem when people give police the benefit of the doubt all the time, like they can't be corrupt. A lot of police can be corrupt. And it happens all the time in America. All the frickin' time in America. Police corruption is a major problem. When you have a bunch of authority and you're the one that gets to spin the narrative, you are going to lie about shit. Now again, there are great cops out there. And I love law enforcement, and I hope law enforcement comes to my rescue, and hope they don't go, fuck that guy from Devil's Advocate, so if he ever gets in trouble, I'm just going to shoot his ass rather than help him. Hopefully that's not the case, because there are good law enforcement officers. So again, I love law enforcement. I hate police corruption, and I hope that the good law enforcement officers also cannot stand when their brothers and sisters in law enforcement are corrupt. I hope that you in law enforcement also can't stand corrupt officers. But I understand the blue wall of silence, that there's that whole reluctance to ever rat on one of your fellows. So you better damn well know that your fellow officer, male or female, is corrupt before you say anything. I get a little bit of the blue wall of silence. But anyways, so this journalist basically said, look, I'm not interested in crazy conspiracy theories, and he didn't want to touch it. But then a Newsday journalist basically starts breaking open, looking into what's going on. And geez, oh my God, dude. Oh my God, this story got crazy. Now again, let me say for the record, right off the bat, before we get started into the police corruption, and that's what this is going to be a really long, this will probably be longer than the episode. And so I want to remind you, watch the episode first. You want my take after the episode, because by the time you watch me rant about it, you will have watched the episode. But better yet, watch the episode with your own eyes and then come back and listen to me rant about how fucking ridiculous that was. And I'm sorry I just dropped the F-bomb, but I'm hot. I am hot. All right. So, let's get into the episode. So the episode basically starts out talking about Amber Costello and how she was one of the original Gilgo4. Now, if you remember, there was 4 bodies that were found relatively close to each other, the Gilgo4. They were found after they went looking for Shannon, Gilbert, I believe, and they didn't find Shannon there, but they did find 4 bodies, and they were relatively close, and they were in burlap sacks and all these things, and I named their names of the victims in episode 1. And the last victim of it, the latest, meaning the one that was most recently killed, was Amber Costello. And so logic concluded in this series that investigators began to focus, or I should say journalists, because investigators weren't doing shit. Journalists began focusing their attention on the last person killed because it's the hottest lead. It's the one that's nearest. So if you're going to look at all the murders of all the time that's happened from whenever it began, it's harder when you look at the ones that are further back. So let's talk about the hot lead. What was last known? And so we focus now on Amber Costello. It's the hottest, nearest lead. And so they resume the investigation. And so we find out a little bit more about Amber's story. She was a sex worker, like the other victims. She lived with a male friend who's featured in both episodes 1 and now in episode 2. Maybe he'll be featured in episode 3. They have him on camera several times. They also have another male friend. I forgot what his nickname was in the show. That was like a friend of a friend, right? So there's Amber, who lives in a house with this male friend who's kind of a redheaded guy with a beard. And then he also has another friend of theirs who he knows. Maybe he called him Wolf. I can't remember what it was. But anyways, these guys are featured in the show. And here's how the basic story starts to play out. And it gets so nuts. You need to pay attention. This part is just a precursor to the bombshells that are coming. So Amber basically calls up her friend. She's panicked because she just had a quote-unquote date with somebody in which she was going to do dancing only, no sex, just dancing. This guy appears to her house. He's a hulking giant of a man, 6'8", 350 pounds, ogreish type guy, which is the man, by the way, that we believe is on trial for this, Rex Heuermann. He's a giant he's a beast of a man. Huge dude. Spooky size, freakish size, large. Have I said it enough different ways? Anyways, so she calls her friend who lives with her, who was not in the house at the time, that she's worried. She's locked herself in the bathroom of the house because this guy that she had come over, John, if you will, she doesn't want to have sex with him. And she tells him there's no sex involved, this is dancing only. And he refuses, according to her, to take no for an answer. And so he's trying to get to her, and she's panicked. And she calls his friend, oh my God, this guy's harassing me. He won't take no for an answer. He's trying to get to me. Kudos kudos to this gentleman who comes to her house, which I believe he's into drugs, and so is the other guy who's into drugs. The other guy who comes with him, this redheaded guy, I'm talking about this wolf character or whatever, he's kind of a scrawny kind of guy. He's not physically imposing. Kudos to these gentlemen who stand up to this giant of a man, 6'8", 350 pounds, freakish stare, whatever they describe. This guy is an intimidating physical beast. And these guys come to the rescue in defense of their friend Amber, who's locked herself in a bathroom and saying this guy's trying to get to her. So kudos to these guys having the balls to stand up to somebody who literally it comes off as super intimidating. So they come in there and they basically confront this guy. He's at the house still, and they describe him as not being, this guy is not intimidated by these two males that come and say, hey, leave this woman alone. She said no, no is no. And they said he basically stared right past him and kept staring at her like he's going to get her kind of thing. And they described it as freakish and again, what I want to point out to you is there's a part of me that wants to say, great on those guys for standing up for their friend. They're in front of a guy who literally may be a mass murderer and serial killer who's a massive human being and could have beat the living piss probably out of both of them. And they're standing up for him because their friend is intimidated and they're like, hey, get the fuck out of here. And that takes some balls to address somebody of that huge nature. And again, he's cold looking past them like he's not, they're like flies to him. They don't, I'm painting a picture. Yes, I'm painting a picture that these guys don't intimidate him, and he's looking at his intended victim, and he basically threatens her and says something to the effect of I'll be back, or so. I can't remember what he said. He didn't say I'll be back, but he indicated that this wasn't kind of done kind of thing. And again, just an interesting thing. This, I believe, is the man, Rex Heuermann. This is a large human being. If you look him up, he's probably the guy they're talking about. Although they haven't named him in episode 1 or 2, they haven't named him yet as the suspect or identified him. They did talk about the truck that he got back into. That was told to law enforcement officers about the individual, his size, his looks, and the car that he drove. All that was given to law enforcement. They didn't give zero shits about following that lead down. That's coming back later. So again, this thing was turned over to police. They know a description of the guy. They know what he drives. They know all these things. They didn't seem to give a shit about this. So let's move on. Now, here's what also came out in the episode that was stunning. But I'm telling you, this is going to take a while to get through. You might as well watch the whole episode and come back. But anyways, point being is that we find out of the other victims remember I told you there was like 10 bodies found. So there was the Gilgo4, and then they found another 6 bodies, and it seemed like it was a dumping ground. Here's the problem, which we're now finding out in episode 2. One of those victims was a baby or a toddler. They called it a baby. It could have been a toddler. It was a young child. Another one was a male dressed in drag, not a female. And so, and then you find out that some of the bodies were dismembered, hands and feet cut off, heads cut off. One had a whole torso that was found in another part of the town, and just the other part of its body was found in this dumping ground area. And then some of them were in burlap bags and some of them were not. And so some people began to question, is it the same killer? Now, some people have this mentality. You've been told as the public to always think that a serial killer progresses over time. They become more refined. They try out and they're sloppy at the beginning. This is the narrative, I'm sure, anybody who's followed true crime. Oh, wait, I must be a killer because I've been studying true crime and killers. That probably means I'm going to go kill somebody, because that, by the way, is the narrative they're painting in Brian Kohberger's case and the Idaho 4, which is kind of like the Gilgo 4, which is that because he studied people like Ted Bundy and stuff like that, that means he's a killer in the making. Same thing for me, because I know all these details that killers apparently evolve over time and get better at their techniques. So the question becomes, is this one killer who is progressing his techniques, and maybe in early stages dismembered people, or maybe in later stages he dismembered people? Anyways, the case may be, is it one person or is it multiple killers? Now, what we find out in the episode is it turns out that this particular stretch of beach apparently seems to be a dumping ground for multiple killers. And that is part of the heart of this argument, is that Rex Heuermann, if he is a serial killer, may not have killed all 10, may not have killed all 7 that he's convinced of, may not have killed any of them, we don't know. But the point being is that it looks like there are more than one killer dumping in this area. Not working together necessarily, just happen to be a good dumping place for people who want to get rid of bodies, and it may not all be the same person. That's important to keep in mind as we go forward. Now, Fast forward 19 months later. So it's 19 months later, and they finally come back to Shannon Gilbert, who still hasn't been found. Again, she's not one of the 10. She's not one of the Gilgo4. She's not one of the additional 6 they found later. So like I said at the end of episode 1, I'm not sure they have found Shannon Gilbert. Nope, they haven't. According to episode 2, they haven't found Shannon Gilbert. And now 19 months later, pressure is being put on. Partly they're being put on, and listen to this, people who doubt people like me and wonder why I take shit so serious and why I have the audacity to comment on cases. Why don't I just wait until it's over? Because journalists were asking questions of things that don't match up, like a critical thinker does. Hey, wait a minute. Some of these people aren't in bags. Some of these people are cut up. One's a toddler, not a sex worker. One's a male, not a female. So is it the same MO? Critical thinkers ask those questions. People who are assholes and attack me will say, what's wrong with you? Why don't you just wait until authorities tell us what happened? Your speculations are just wild, crazy conspiracy theories. Why are you taking it so serious? Why? Because it was people like me, in my opinion, watching this episode, it was people like me, journalists. Now, I was not working for an official paper or anything like that. I'm working on my own as an independent journalist, if you will. But journalists and critical thinkers start to ask questions. Wait a minute. Is there more than one killer? Is this a dumping ground for multiple killers? Why a toddler? Because critical thinkers ask us, why a toddler? I thought we were going after sex workers. Is there a toddler or a baby killed? What does that make sense? Was the baby or the toddler a child of a sex worker? Maybe that can explain it. Why a male? Why is a male in there? Is the male a sex worker? Is it sex? Critical thinkers ask questions. Non-critical thinkers, or sheeple, if I sometimes refer to them, NPCs, non-player characters, will say, just wait until they tell you what happened. Who cares? I'm going to lose my fucking mind. And I apologize again for the F-bomb. I can't help it when I get this spun up. So, after 19 months, and investigators starting to plug in and starting to ask the right questions, law enforcement starts getting pressure to go back and look into Shannon Gilbert, the missing woman. And guess what happens? Guess what we find out? They never searched the area that Shannon Gilbert was last reported seen. They never looked. Right next to where Shannon Gilbert was last reported seen is a giant swampy, marshy area. Police never investigated that. Law enforcement never cared to investigate that. After 19 months, they get persuaded with a bunch of questions about Shannon Gilbert and all the inconsistencies in the murders to go back and look at, hey, why don't we fucking look at the area where Shannon Gilbert went missing 19 months later? So they do. And right where she was last seen, they find her purse and a pair of pants and other things. Not her body, but they find her personal belongings right by where she was last seen in that marshy area. And then the police come on and they basically defend why they never looked. Well, you have to understand the marsh is a really dangerous place and people get stuck in the mud there and officers just don't have time and the resources to go looking, and we had no reason to look other than, of course, that's the last place she was fucking seen. But that was the story. And oh, by the way, I'm a crazy conspiracy theorist for bringing up that the police may have done something inappropriate. Wait till you find out. Wait till you frickin' find out why they didn't want to go look there. This is what I'm going to lose my mind. I'm the asshole. I'm the conspiracy theorist because I ask questions like, why the fuck didn't you look at the swamp in the first place? Why didn't you look at the marsh in the first place? The journalist who at the beginning of the show said, people kept mentioning police corruption, and I said, I'm not interested in conspiracy theories. He finally says, why didn't we look at the marsh, which is like the last place that he finally agrees. Maybe there was something, but it takes him 19 months for him to think, maybe you're right. Like maybe we should have looked at the last area Shannon Gilbert was looked at. Oh, look, we found her clothes right away in the marsh. I'm not interested in crazy conspiracy theories. It gets freaking horrendous. Horrendous. All right? Horrendous. All right. So they do an extensive search. They find her body then about a half mile away from where her clothes were found. So I don't know how much clothes was there. Her pants certainly were left behind along with her purse. Whether her blouse was there or not, it seems not, because they only mention the jeans. Her jeans were found, her purse was found, identifying things of her were found, but not her body. Half mile further into the swamp, when they finally go investigate the swamp, they find her remains in the swamp. Okay, and she didn't have her pants on and all those things. Then here's where it gets crazy. So all of a sudden, the police commissioner comes out And the police commissioner immediately says, hey, look, cause of death, we're not sure. We think it was accidental. She either got stuck in the mud and she drowned. That's what it looks like to us. Or maybe she got hypothermia because she got hypothermic. She got confused. It happens. People get delusional when they get cold and they think that they're hot when they're actually cold, and so they strip off clothes. This explains why she stripped off her pants and walked through the marsh naked and then froze to death. And this was all speculation by the police department, the police commissioner, saying, you know what, we think that she probably just died of natural causes. She must have froze to death or drowned. And there was no reason to believe that. So then asshole public who believe that law enforcement always tells you the truth and always believe the official story and wait until that would be good for you. That would be good for you. If you were a lot of the mainstream sheeple, you'd be like, oh, you know what? Law enforcement said she drowned. End of story. She drowned, or she took off her clothes. The police told us. It's got to be what happened. I can't do that enough. Are you kidding me? Okay, no. Let's go. Maybe the police have hidden something. But you know what? I'm an asshole conspiracy theorist for thinking this way. This drives me insane. I'm gonna fucking have an aneurysm. I'm sorry. I keep dropping the F-bomb. I will try to stop. But as you can see, I'm heated. I'm very heated. All right. So turns out the coroner. Determines that the cause of death is undetermined. I want you to understand this, people. Law enforcement dismiss it as a drowning. A coroner who's an official, I don't know why coroner, a coroner who's an official, a state official or a city official, a coroner determines cause of death undetermined. So now you have officials. Officials say, hey, it's a drowning. Officials say, cause of death unknown. District attorney gets involved. He weighs in. Nothing to see here. Officials are all telling you this is just an accident. And sheeple will say, well, that asshole DA, devil's advocates, he's going around trying to tell people that there's something else here. I don't know why that guy takes it so personally. He's an idiot. Why doesn't he just wait until they tell us what happened? I'm not mad at you on a personal basis. I'm mad at the collective attitude towards me of I'm an asshole for being a critical thinker. All right? Because get this. Then what happens is the family, I believe, ends up hiring a medical examiner to come in and re-examine the body of the deceased, of Shannon Gilbert, to determine if it really was accidental or undetermined cause of death. That coroner who comes in, that medical examiner does his own examination and determines that she was strangled. She was killed by strangulation based on the structure of bones and things that have been disturbed. He knows that she was strangled and cause of death was strangulation. Now you have to ask yourself, did the coroner in the state purposely lie by saying cause of death unknown, or did they just, as this medical examiner tried to carefully say, made a willfully neglectful diagnosis? So he was willfully neglectful. Like, maybe that coroner could, or she could have been a female, maybe that coroner could have determined the cause of death, but they willfully were neglectful and wrote it down as undetermined. Why? Probably because law enforcement wanted to go down as undetermined. Oh, Mr. Devil's Advocates, you fucking conspiracy theorist. I'm sorry. You're a nutbag. You are unhinged. You realize how crazy you sound? Here we go again with law enforcement's going to convince the coroner to lie about the cause of death. Okay. Hear me out. So let's get into the police corruption. So again, journalists are being told, the journalist who's featured tons on this show is being told over and over again, you need to look into the police department. The police department is corrupt in Suffolk County, one of the largest police departments in the country, one of the most powerful police departments in the country, Suffolk County. And so now now all of a sudden journalists are being told, and people are telling the journalists, start fucking looking into the police department. So they look into Richard Dormer, who's the police commissioner. The current district attorney, or the district attorney, this part, or the assistant DA, this part I got a little bit confused on, but it doesn't matter. You're gonna see what's gonna happen. Doesn't seem to agree. So the district attorney of the state, the district attorney believes that there's more than one killer, but Richard Dormer immediately shuts that down and says, nope, it's one killer and we're not going to talk about it. So now we have this weird situation. And critical thinkers, most people are not critical thinkers, I would argue. Critical thinkers start to ask, what's happening? Because all of a sudden we see a fight taking place in the public where the district attorney theorizes there's more than one killer, but the police commissioner insists that there's only one killer, and they're literally arguing each other. And this doesn't make sense, because you would think law enforcement and the prosecution would be on the same side, but they're arguing now because the prosecution, the DA's office, seems to indicate that it's more than one killer, or thinks that it's more than one killer, but the police department wants to insist it's one killer. And critical thinkers now are asking questions. Why are they fighting about this? It seems odd. Why don't you just wait until they tell you what happened and you'll be okay? All right, so critical thinkers start asking questions. Again, why is there burlap bags? Why are some of the victims in burlap bags? Why is there a toddler? Why is there a baby of some kind? Why is there a male? If this was all supposedly one serial killer going after female sex workers, it doesn't make sense. We're asking questions. Turns out again that they're thinking that Ocean Parkway area appears to be a dumping ground for multiple killers. So investigators start to wonder why the district attorney is focusing on multiple killers, but the police department doesn't want to look at that possibility. So it turns out at this point that Richard Dormer, the chief of police, is on his way out. He's getting ready to retire. This leads to the enormous, hold your hats, folks. Hold your hats. All right, so the police commissioner is on his way out. The district attorney, Thomas Spota, is looking into possible police corruption. Maybe he's not the conspiracy theorist. It's okay if the district attorney wants to look into it. By the way, Spota can Spota's got his own issues. I'm just pointing out that you guys, and not you, again, if you're watching my channel, to be fair, if you're watching my channel and you're with me this far, you're probably not the sheeple I'm talking about. The people who come onto my YouTube channel and leave a shitty comment like, I don't know why you take this so serious. Why don't you wait until they tell us what happened? Those are the people I'm talking about. And fuck, for all I know, sorry about the F-bombs. Maybe I'll edit some of this out in editing. Anyways, maybe those people are bots. Maybe they're not even real human beings. I would hate to think that they're real human beings, but I think they are real human beings. I get attacked on a personal level from people saying I'm a conspiracy theorist. I have friends who think that I'm a crazy conspiracy theorist. And every single time something comes out and I point to them that there's another case of police and law enforcement corruption, they're like, well, but that's a one-off. Really? How many times do I have to point it out to you before you start realizing it's not a one-off? How many times? How many times are you going to keep calling me the crazy conspiracy theorist when I show you case after case after case where law enforcement and prosecution lie about what happened in the case to get a conviction, and I'm still in your mind, the kind of little off in the nutbag conspiracy theorist person? Why don't we just wait until the law enforcement tells us what happened and we'll be happy with those things? All right. So, Police Commissioner Richard Dormer retires, and the district attorney recommends promoting a cop by the name of Jim Burke to be the new police commissioner. There's where, or the chief of the department. They use these terms kind of interchangeably. Police commissioner, chief of the department. I think there's a slight difference. So at times they say it chief of the department a lot. At other times they use different terminology. So I feel like there can be some nuances there that I don't want to get accused of not do your homework, as someone said. That's another one that recently got to me on YouTube. Do your homework. Oh my God, like I do tons of homework, but yeah, I can still make mistakes. Okay, so Richard Dormer, the chief of police or the police commissioner, because I think those are two different jobs, but anyways, whatever role he was in, he basically steps down, he retires, and the DA recommends, the DA didn't appoint, but the DA recommends, and a politician helps promote a police officer by the name of Jim Burke to be the new commissioner or chief of the department. And here's what the problem is, because again, critical thinkers say to themselves, why the hell would you promote Jim Burke? Why? Well, let's look into Jim Burke. Let's find out, and this will destroy the argument that there's not corruption in law enforcement and prosecution. So wait till you see what happens. And if you still want to maintain this is a one-off, I got something. I don't know. Okay, so the DA Thomas Spota recommends promoting Jim Burke to be the new chief of the department. People want to know why, because critical thinkers have realized that Jim Burke has a history of police corruption. Oh, I'm sorry. So the district attorney wants to promote a police officer with a history of police corruption. He has been involved in, quote, dozens of internal affairs investigations against him. Jim Burke himself, as an officer, has had dozens of internal affairs investigations into him on police corruption. But that's the guy that the district attorney wants to recommend to be promoted as the chief of the police department, a guy with dozens of internal... I can't hit that enough, people. And critical thinkers, not sheeple assholes, but critical thinkers go, why the hell would you promote a cop with dozens of internal affairs investigations and allegations of police corruption as the head of your department? Critical thinkers go, that doesn't make a lot of sense. Sheeple say, you're just a crazy conspiracy theorist. What the hell does it matter to you? Why do you care? Just wait until they tell you what happened and be happy. All right, but some of us can't do that. So we're going to go on and look at this shit. I'm not even halfway through my notes, people. This is going to be a long one. All right. So, they want to know why this guy's the top pick for the thing. And we find out, by the way, that this would mean that this law enforcement officer is going to jump 4 promotion levels. In other words, he should have been promoted to 4 other, or at least 3 other lower level promotions before getting promoted to the head of the department, the chief of the department, the top dog in the police department. But he skips all the lower promotions and goes straight to the top. And people want to know how not only did somebody with a history of internal affairs investigations about police corruption get to the top, but how did he bypass being promoted all the lower levels? He just goes straight to the top of the dog because of the word of a district attorney. Well, we're going to find out what the district attorney and this police officer have in common together because of police corruption that has been documented for a long time. But people say, oh my God, crazy conspiracy theories and this damn police corruption. Quit talking about police corruption. We don't care. So Jim Burke takes office as the new chief of the department. He immediately demotes a bunch of police officers and law enforcement. What's that about? People that don't play ball? Crazy conspiracy theorists, asshole devil's advocates? Who probably people needed firing. That's his job. Okay. Then he promotes some other officers and he gives them an award, and he names the award for these other people that he gives awards and promotions to the Spota Award. Literally, he gives an award to them named after the district attorney that ended up getting him promoted to the chief of police. So he fires a bunch of people. Wonder who those are. Maybe good cops. And then promotes and awards people with the Spota Award, those who he wants in key positions. Who would those be? Maybe people who've been loyal to him on previous investigations into police misconduct. I am an asshole. That can't be true. We don't have police corruption in America. That doesn't happen. I'm a nutbag. You shouldn't listen to a channel like me because I'm just coming up with wild speculations. Police corruption isn't a real thing. It's only conspiracy theories. And if it does happen, it happens one-off. It doesn't happen very often. So all those things you want to say about me, go find another YouTuber, go find another channel. I'm not the guy for you. Now, if you're still with me, let's talk about that police corruption. What happened? Well, let's go back to the start of Spota and Jim Burke's history together. This started when Spota, who's now the district attorney, right, in this part of the story, when Spota was a prosecutor. So he was the lead prosecutor, as happens before you become the district attorney. So he's a prosecutor. Back when he was a prosecutor, and he's much older than Mr. Jim Spota at the time, there was a disturbing case in the news. And I remember this case. I remember this case vaguely. Just like I remember that there was a documentary about this Rex Heuermann guy who's the alleged Gilgo4 killer. I remember I seen a documentary. I remember this case as well. The case basically involved, and I'm just going to get the basics of the idea, a young boy, teen, maybe preteen, I can't remember, who it was an issue of other boys stealing his bicycle, and they murdered this kid out in the woods, and they murdered him, and it was found out that they killed him in a particularly gruesome manner. They stuffed rocks down his throat, and the kid asphyxiated from having rocks stuffed down his throat, and he choked to death and died. So it was extremely brutal, it was extremely disgusting, senseless murder, and it seemed to be over a stolen bike. This was something that Spota, as a prosecutor, was prosecuting at the time. Now, here's where it gets twisted. And if you're a sheeple, you will say this never happened. Despite the fact, by the way, spoiler alert, people go to jail. People go to jail over this, meaning law enforcement goes to jail over what happened. So again, I'm a conspiracy theorist asshole. Go ahead and put that in the back burner. What I'm going to tell you is allegedly happened. That's allegedly, Mr. Advocate. That doesn't happen. Okay? People do end up going to jail, by the way. The FBI puts officers away for this event. So this is a spoiler alert. Even though I'm an asshole, spoiler alert. People go to jail for this. All right. So it turns out that the prosecutor, who is Spota, now the district attorney who promotes Jim Burke, he's trying to get a confession. It turns out that investigators believe that he coerced a false confession out of the killer. That what the killer wasn't a killer, but he convinced him to confess to it. Oh, Mr. Advocates, that shit doesn't happen. If you confess to something, you are the killer. Nobody's going to confess to something that they didn't do. Well, let me tell you how it happens, and then I'll show you how it happened. So let me tell you how it happens. This is 101. What you do is you find people willing to testify against somebody. Hey, so-and-so is the guy that we want for this. Can you tell us you maybe saw him there? Because if you saw him there, then we've got a really strong case. Oh yeah, I can say that you saw them there. Great. Okay, then you go to the guy who's on trial for something he didn't do and say, you know what, we've got people who say they saw you there. You're screwed. You're going down for this, whether you like it or not. If you confess, we'll give you a lot lesser sentence. But if you keep fighting us when we've got witnesses who we've coerced into telling us that they saw you there. So we're going to bring these people into the courtroom and they're going to say, yeah, I saw this guy do this. I saw him there. That's going to happen. That's going to happen on the trial. That's going to happen. So you're going down for this, whether you like it or not. So if you confess, it'll go easier. If you want to be an asshole and keep saying you didn't do it, then it's going to be harder on you. And so they end up confessing, taking a plea deal. And then the sheeple in America say, well, nobody's going to confess to something they didn't do. They do when you tell them, hey, we've got people who will come onto the stand. Your best friend, your buddy, your neighbor is going to come on there and say they saw you there because we asked them to and we wanted to build a case. And they said, sure, I'll say that, even if it didn't happen. And because they're going to say that, you're going down for something, whether you did it or not. You might as well play ball and plead with us. That happens all the time. Oh, Mr. Advocates, that's assholery. That shit doesn't happen in America very often. If it does, it's a one-off. Okay, it did happen here, so let's talk about this particular case. All right, so it turns out the prosecutor was accused of basically getting a false confession. By the way, Spota, when he was the prosecutor, had a 95% confession rate to murders. When he was the prosecutor, 95% of the time people would confess to the murder under his watch. They said that's an unheard of rate. Maybe that prosecutor is just really effing good at his job. Maybe he's fantastic, and Spota just knows how to get people to confess. Or Spota knows how to use the police officers and other tactics to say, you know what, we're going to bring people on into trial anyways. We're going to tell you did it. You might as well plea. Oh, I got another victory. All my people who come under me when I'm a prosecutor, they confess to the murders because I'm just that good. I'm just that good. So, turns out what happened was Spota believed, purely based on the fact that there was a shoe imprint of like a Vans shoe, that the killers must be teenagers because only teenagers wear Vans. That's how his logic worked. Okay, so we know that the person who killed this boy and shoved rocks down his throat has to be a teen because there was a shoe print of a Vans shoe around the area. Only teenagers wear Vans, so therefore we're looking for a teenager. So then Spota has people teenagers brought in, and starts questioning everybody to see if he can find a witness that will put a teen that he wants to go down for this at the scene. Hey, can you say that you saw so-and-so at that scene? Because, this is the guy we want for it. We think he's the one. You're a teenager. You probably know that guy. Did you see him there that day? Oh, eventually if they find a person or two who can do that. You know who one of those people are? Jim Burke. Young Jim Burke, who's a teenager, rats on somebody and says, you know what? Yeah, I saw him there. And literally investigators later find out that Jim Burke, young 16-year-old, I think at the time, Jim Burke, who will later become the police commissioner, promoted by the same Spota, who is the prosecutor, that he was coached into giving testimony against somebody else, which was then used to coerce that person into confessing to a crime that they probably didn't do. And another individual. 2 individuals got basically sentenced for the death of this young boy shoving rocks down his throat based on what investigators have later determined was a false confession and a false arrest, and all of it based on getting help from a teenager by the name of Jim Burke, who will later become the head of the police department, to testify against the kid and say, oh yeah, I will say exactly what you want me to say. And that started, as the show showed, a 30-year relationship between Spota and Burke. Now, someday, Burke's going to get rewarded for that testimony, for putting the kid away for something that maybe he didn't do. Mr. Advocates, that's some crazy-ass conspiracy theory shit you've got there. You're a nutbag and a little unhinged. Well, I didn't make the fucking Netflix episode. Netflix did. So talk to them about it. I'm just repeating it. So I'm just hitting it harder because I'm that kind of guy. I'm an asshole. Okay, I'm doing a lot of swearing. I might put a disclaimer on the thumbnail. Lots of swear words in this episode. All right. So the two boys get sentenced for murder. Reporters that are investigating know that they seem to see, why is it that this prosecutor has a 95% confession rate in murders? You know what? Critical thinkers ask questions like that. Critical thinkers want to, like, that just seems like really odd. Oh, well, that's just assholery. Why would you ask those kind of questions? Critical thinkers, you conspiracy nuts, just wait till they tell you what happened and be good with it. All right. Fast forward to the current Gilgo4 murders. Now we're back. Now Jim Burke, the former teenager testifying against somebody in a big high-profile case when Spota was the prosecutor. Now Jim Burke's the chief of police, being promoted because of his district attorney friend Spota, and now he's in charge of the police department. Suddenly, Jim Burke, a corrupt cop, let me remind you, with multiple internal affairs investigations against him, is in charge of the Gilgo Beach investigation. So now he's in charge of the Gilgo Beach investigation. Let this sink in for a minute. He's in charge of finding the killer in the Gilgo Beach investigation. Now, I'm not saying Rex Heuermann isn't a guy. I'm not saying that. Wait till you hear. If you watched the episode, you know. You already know. So, like, if you did it the way I told you to, you've already watched the episode, so it's not wait till you hear. If you're just hearing my live take on it, you're going to be like, oh my God, did that just happen on that episode? I got to go see if that Devil's Advocate guy really tells the truth, because it sounds like he's just making shit up. They couldn't possibly have said that in the episode. Okay, watch the episode. All right, so suddenly, so remember, the FBI starts to investigate the Gilgo4 murders at this time. So now you've got the police department and you got Jim Burke at the head of this investigation. The FBI wants to help out. The FBI is coming in and they want to do forensics data on cell phone pings. They want to try to help locate a suspect. Where were the victims at? Where were their cell phones pinging? Let's see if we can triangulate things. Let's see if we can get an area where the killer probably is at. Where's our suspect? Where does he probably live? Let's look at cell phone data. Jim Burke, who's in the police department, the head of the police department, wants no part of FBI's help. Jim Spota, or Mr. Spota, the DA, Thomas Spota, I believe, wants nothing to do with the FBI's help. Thomas Spota basically tells the FBI, no thank you, we don't need your help, stay out of our investigation. Then critical thinkers, assholes, if you're in the sheeple community, assholes like me, start going, why the hell do you not want the FBI's help? Why does the local police department and the DA's office want no part of the FBI helping with this investigation? Why would they do that? You know, and wait a minute, there's also a corrupt police officer at the head of this whole thing, and that corrupt police officer who's had multiple internal affairs investigations, he doesn't want anything to do with the police and the FBI getting involved. Oh, by the way, Jim Burke also put out a memo to his department telling officers to not cooperate with any other law enforcement agencies, and if the feds or anybody comes to them, to immediately let him, Jim Burke, know what's going on personally, so he can know immediately. So again, as a conspiracy theory asshole like myself would say, so that he can keep damage control and make sure that the feds don't start looking into the wrong areas, because they've got it pegged as one guy. They know who it is. End of story. We don't need the FBI's help. Well, actually, at this point, they haven't identified Rex Heuermann. They don't have a person for the killings. That's another part of the story. The fact that they don't have anybody, but yet they don't want apparently anybody being caught. That should ring a bell, by the way. But only critical thinkers ask those questions. Well, why wouldn't they want somebody caught? Like, why wouldn't they want all the help they can get? If they don't know who did it, why aren't they bending over backwards to get the feds' help and get the guy? Why would they? Why? But that's an asshole question to ask. I'm sorry. Let me get past this. So, the DA and Jim Burke are fighting the FBI, not wanting them to get involved in the police investigation. Now, here's the bombshell. So now an attorney comes forward. An attorney comes forward and he's got a witness, a client, if you will, who's bringing allegations against the chief of police or the head of the department, Jim Burke. What is the allegation? Well, the witness, her name is Leanne. And by the way, it's not just nameless Leanne, even though her last name isn't given in the episode. Her face is on the screen. She speaks on the screen. It's not an anonymous person. Leanne's a person. Leanne is a sex worker. Leanne comes on with an attorney and makes an allegation against the head of the police department and says she met Mr. James Burke at a party in Oak Beach where these bodies are being dumped and had sex with him as a paid sex worker while he was a police officer, commissioner, or head of the department. She had sex with Jim Burke, and she's a sex worker. That's the first thing she claims, with the attorney by her side. She also claims that Jim Burke, the chief of this department, became frustrated because he couldn't consummate the sex act. What does that mean? If I were to run through the Universal Translator as an older gentleman, he has a problem getting it up, and so he can't perform, and he tells her she's a terrible whore. That's what he tells her, according to her words. I can't get it up, so you're a terrible whore. This is a police officer, by the way. I know that's completely assholery. Cops don't do shit like that. I understand that. I understand. There's no such thing as police corruption. Cops don't do bad things. They don't fucking hire hookers. They don't do drugs. Oh, that, by the way, there was several allegations of Jim Burke doing drugs in those internal affair things. But they don't do those things. That's not true. Police corruption's not a thing. Only assholes like myself theorize about shit like that. And if it did ever happen, it's a one-off. I get it. I get it. So, she comes forward saying that she had sex with this police officer. In addition, after he got angry at her for not being a good whore, he tried to choke her. Shannon Gilbert was killed from strangulation. So now we have the chief of police who doesn't want any help finding a serial killer in the area, killing women, killing specifically sex workers. And you've got now a chief of police who is being accused by a sex worker of hiring her for sex, choking her when he gets mad because she's not a good enough whore, and I mean, I realize that we're jumping to conclusions here. There's nothing to see here. There really is nothing to see here, right? Because police corruption is not a thing. It can't be true. Who would listen to a hooker anyways? Who listens to a prostitute? Just because she accuses him of doing those things, that doesn't mean he did it. That's bullshit. We're not, whatever, devil's advocates. You can believe what you want. That's somebody paid a hooker to come forward and accuse the police officer or something. That doesn't happen. Cops aren't like that. Okay, why don't you watch the episode? Let's go on. So not only, by the way, is Burke not fired for misconduct on all his previous investigations by internal affairs, not only is he ever demoted, but he actually gets promoted to the head of the police department. I just wanted to make that point clear in case we didn't have that one. So I want to make sure that we're clear about these things. The commissioner, the head of the department of the police is investigating a serial killer of sex workers while he himself is a known user hiring sex workers and being aggressive and choking a prostitute. According to one woman, okay. But fellow officers, now let's fast forward. We're getting towards the end of my notes, sort of getting toward the ends of my notes. I hope that you're more interested in this story. And I hope you're not a sheeple who's like, that Mr. Advocate's off the rails and unhinged. I don't know why he takes it so personally. Police corruption doesn't really happen. He's making shit up. We'll wait until this trial's over and they tell us Rex Herman's the guy and be done with it. But fellow cops come forward and they say that as a fellow police officer, the chief, the head of the department, Burke, had no respect for prostitutes whatsoever, referred to their murders, the murders of prostitutes, he referred to them as misdemeanor murders, like they didn't matter. They're just prostitutes, is what the fellow officer said that Burke's attitude was. Jim Burke, the head of the department's attitude is, hookers dying are no big deal. They're just prostitutes. They're misdemeanor murders. Who cares? They're prostitutes. Well, Mr. Advocates, I'm sure you're getting that wrong because police don't talk that way. That's not what happened. You're an asshole for bringing it up. Wait until they tell us what happened to the Gilgo4, and then that's what happened. Sex workers in the county, by the way, know never to go to the police because they're not getting any help. Why? Because the head of the police department has the attitude sex workers are misdemeanor crimes. Nobody cares. They're prostitutes. They're just hookers. Who cares? All right. So I'm going to do this a little out of order. The next thing that happened is we kind of skip forward to building the Rex Herman story a little bit more. But I want to paint one more thing. Let's stay with Mr. Jim Burke. So now there's an allegation, and now this is going to blow your mind again. Well, it's not going to blow your mind because you watched the episode, right? Because I told you to watch the episode. So it's not going to blow your mind. You're just going to listen to me rant about something that you're like, yeah, I didn't like that either. Please leave a comment. Tell me how much of an asshole I am for accusing law enforcement of doing shady shit, because I'm sure that I'm completely unhinged and off my rocker and taking it too personally. So, about this time, there's a man who's arrested. I think his name was John Bittroff. He's no. We're not going to talk about John Bittroff. We're going to talk about a different individual. This is the man I wanted to talk about was the man that was arrested for breaking into cars. And that's the part I was trying to get to. He's a drug addict. He's breaking into cars. Okay. His name is Christopher Loeb. He's breaking into cars, and when he breaks into cars and he gets arrested for breaking into cars, he gets caught. One of the cars that he broke into had a duffel bag in the car. In this duffel bag was some sex toys, okay, some pornography, okay, and a gun belt, okay, and also business cards, or if you will, cards about being the chief of the police. Yeah, and in fact, what it was is it was actually Jim Burke's car that he broke into. Bad luck for Mr. Christopher Loeb. He broke into the head of the police department's personal car and found a duffel bag with porn and sex toys and a gun belt. No big deal. And cards identifying him as the chief of police, right? No big deal. None of that's a crime. None of that's a crime. But Christopher Loeb's brought into the detention center. Top detectives immediately flood in on Christopher Loeb, according to Christopher Loeb's story. And of course, we can't believe Christopher Loeb's story because he's a criminal and a drug addict. That's been admitted. He's a criminal and drug addict. So whatever Christopher Loeb said right now, you can just admit. Anything Christopher Loeb says is horseshit. Law enforcement are the good guys. This didn't happen. So I just want to preface you right now, what I'm about to tell you, Christopher Loeb says couldn't have happened because Christopher Loeb's a criminal and a drug addict, and police officers are the good guys. Again, spoiler alert, they go to jail for this. So I don't know how that happened because law enforcement is not corrupt. And Christopher Loeb's a criminal and a drug addict. So I don't know how this happened, people, because I realize you can't trust Christopher Loeb. He's a drug addict and a criminal, and cops are good. So it baffles me that cops go to jail for this. I don't get it either. I hope you understand sarcasm. I'm dripping it off my face. I hope you understand sarcasm. Christopher Loeb's brought in. Detectives start interrogating him. Jim Burke, the head of the police department, comes in personally and physically assaults Christopher Loeb and starts beating him up. Christopher Loeb claims for 10 hours he's interrogated and he's assaulted, physically beaten by Christopher Loeb and another officer or two in detention, threatened his life, told him that they would kill him. They'll overdose him with drugs and make it look like it's an accident, and they'll rape his mother. Mr. Advocates, screw yourself. That didn't happen. Police officers don't do shit like that. You, sir, need to get your head checked. You are losing control and you're unhinged. That shit doesn't happen. By the way, Burke goes to jail for that. Burke goes to jail for that, assholes. Sorry. You're not the asshole. Again, if you're watching this video, you don't agree with any of this sarcasm I'm putting on. But I'm the asshole, remember. I'm the asshole because Christopher Loeb's a drug addict and a criminal. That didn't happen. He didn't get beaten. Nobody threatened his life. But Burke goes to jail for it. Oh, by the way, Spota goes to jail for it too. Watch. All right. So they threaten him. They tell him they're going to rape his mom. They tell him they're going to kill him. And then the federal government starts getting investigating. The FBI comes in. Federal government's going to investigate Jim Burke and the police department. Did you guys beat up a criminal and a drug addict? Oh, no, sir. That guy's a criminal and a drug addict. You know you can't trust a fucking word Christopher Loeb says. He's a drug addict and a criminal. We're the good guys. So the FBI, however, I don't know why people they would do this, but the FBI didn't let it go for 3 years. They continued to investigate and continued to investigate, investigating other officers, getting people to talk about Jim Burke. I don't know why they would do that because we know that the police are the good guys. Why would the FBI possibly keep at it for 3 years? Complete assholes. And maybe they're a bunch of conspiracy theorists in the FBI. They continue to go after Jim Burke. And eventually they find a cop who admits. Now, granted, the FBI could have coerced a cop to talk about against Jim Burke because maybe the feds wanted Jim Burke. But that can't happen either because that would suggest that law enforcement gets false confessions from people. That's not something that they do. The law enforcement are good guys. So whatever you do, don't suggest that the federal government did it because, which one do you want to have it, people? Either the federal government found out that police were being corrupt and Jim Burke was corrupt, or the federal FBI themselves were corrupt and made officers falsely testify against police officers. But unfortunately, I don't know what to do for your sake if you're a person who believes that law enforcement aren't criminals and don't do anything ever wrong. Unfortunately, there's no way you can get out of this. Either the FBI coerced false confessions against a police officer or a police officer actually did something against the law. Either way, you've got police officers doing something illegal. And I know that is something that you can't comprehend if you're a certain type of person. You can't because the cops are the good guys and Christopher Loeb is a freaking drug addict and a criminal. So what happens is the FBI is on it for 3 years. They find out that a cop says, I was there in the room when Christopher Loeb got beaten. And yes, that did happen. Jimmy Burke did beat Christopher Loeb for like 10 hours. And Christopher Loeb, was correct. And Jim Burke gets arrested as chief of police, the head of the department. And he goes to jail for, I think, 4 years for civil rights violations and obstruction of justice. Now, I realize that couldn't have happened. That couldn't have really happened. Somebody's lying. Christopher Loeb lied, and the FBI must have bought it for some reason. I don't know why, because he's a criminal and a drug addict. So there's no way that officer, the head of the police department, threatened to kill him and rape his mother whatever. And so the 4 years that he goes to jail for that, I don't know what happened there. I get it. Oh, by the way, the district attorney, was the one who was defending Jimmy Burke. He ends up going to jail as well for lying, basically under oath, and obstruction of justice as well, trying to help his buddy Burke. So Spota, the district attorney, ends up going to jail for this for 3 years. And I really can't explain it to you people. I realize that police corruption doesn't happen, and so I don't know how to explain that to you. I don't. I'm a completely unhinged. This never happens. It's a one-off kind of situation, even though it's kind of like happening in the Luigi Mangione case, and it's kind of like happening in the Brian Kohberger case that I do. But I'm an asshole. I get it. Those things don't happen. Those are one-offs. If they did happen, there you go. Now, I was mentioning one other thing. They briefly mention two other people. There's Rex Heuermann, who they don't mention by name. They talk about Nikki Brass, who's a sex worker, who claims that she met with a gentleman who basically in the area. He was a massive ogre man, 6'8", 350 pounds, massive man, ogreish. She ends up asking him as she's getting uncomfortable with their conversation about this alleged sex worker arrangement that she got called in for, if he's ever heard about the Gilgo4 murders, and he gets excited. And he's like, starts to name everything about it. Victim number 1 and victim number 2, and did you know this, and did you know that, and did you know that that's a really dark area where the bodies are found, and hey, who knows? Maybe I could be the killer. And she gets super creeped out, and she literally texts friends during that date and says, oh my God, I think I'm having a date with the Gilgo4 murderer, okay? And it turns out that that's the guy I think that they end up arresting for this thing. And that's the guy I remember. That's the documentary I remember. I remember the interview with this woman, Nikki Brass. She looked completely different in this episode, but it's the same exact story I remember. So I think she dyed her hair, and years have gone by, and so she looks much different. But I believe it's the same woman that I saw this documentary. That's why I told you, I was like, man, didn't they catch that guy? I remember seeing a documentary about a girl that was with him and had a date and got freaked out. That's that story being told. Again, they don't identify Rex by name. They just kind of cover it. But one last thing they give you is a short story about John Bittroff. I mentioned his name earlier, but I kind of cut it off because I was out of order. This is a guy who was arrested for 2 or 3 potential murders in the 90s. They linked his DNA to some murders back then. And so that person starts coming in as a guy who's dumping bodies in the same general area as Rex Heuermann is supposedly dumping bodies. Again, the idea is there may be multiple killers dumping bodies in this area. So now the question becomes, if Rex Heuermann is one of the killers, is he just the Idaho? Is he just the Gilgo4 murderer, the ones that are in the burlap bags? Are the dismembered bodies and the other 6 bodies, whatever, found somewhere else, and the toddler in the mail, they're not his? Are they somebody else's? Because he's being tried for some of those as well. And then we find out towards the very, very end of the episode, you are almost out of here, people. You are almost out of here. Okay, you find out that the new police commissioner is put in place, Geraldine Hart, and she becomes the first department in the state to start using investigative genealogy, genetic genealogy information, IgG. If you're a follower of the Brian Kohberger situation, you know all about IgG, and you know how IgG, the investigative genealogy, genetic genealogy information, is using publicly accessible ancestry databases to try to link DNA from crime scenes to huge databases that are out in the public to try to make connections to people and put people at crimes that they want to use. And that is how the episode ends. It was a new technology, relatively untested, going to be the center of a whole bunch of debate in the court system with the defense on the use of IgG. And if you're following me on Devil's Advocates and the Idaho 4 Brian Kohberger case, we've got the same case. Largely, the case is revolving around Brian Kohberger and the IgG information, investigative genetic genealogy information that was put through a universal big giant database to try to place Brian Kohberger at the crime scene. So the same kind of thing is happening in that case as it is here. Now, I told you I wasn't going to follow this case. I'm not planning on following this case. This is our movie night. I hope you feel romantic and special. Aren't we on a great little movie night? Get some popcorn together, snuggle up on the couch. Okay, I'm married. I can't do any of those things. But the point being is that our little movie night is over for the night. I want to remind you to like, subscribe, follow, put the notification bell on YouTube if you haven't done so. I'm also on TikTok. Follow me there. Consider subscribing to the members only portion for only $3, $2 $2.99, you'll get behind the scene rants, because sometimes when I go so long, I'm like, I'm going to give the public an hour of that, but I'm going to do another 2 hours for members only. So sometimes there's some hidden gems like that. I do other content that I think is not suitable for the main public. So if you're into that kind of stuff and you can't get enough of listening to an asshole like me, conspiracy theorist, who comes up with unhinged theories that have no basis of being asked because criminals are criminals and law enforcement are the good guys, if you have any sympathy that you want to listen to some asshole like that, then sign up and watch me, subscribe, like, do all those things. Please leave a comment, interact, make this thing go a little bit heavy, because I think there's some fun stuff in this story. Until then, sayonara. I have a live tonight with Birdie Bombshell, by the way, at the recording. I'm going live tonight with Birdie Bombshell. We're going to talk about Brian Koberger and that Idaho 4, which is kind of related to this genealogy shit. We're going to talk about that tonight. You're probably not going to see this episode in time for that airing, but it will be recorded and rebroadcast on YouTube. So again, another reason, like, subscribe, follow, notification bell, and maybe become a member. See you guys later.